This brought new turning points such as the Age of Common Man, the lead-up to the election of 1828. Many of Jackson's supporters were the average American, as he was. The inauguration, when Jackson invited the public to visit the White House for his inauguration. The expansion of democracy, when the state government was changing their requirements to vote. The spoils system. This was something Jackson favored, as his supporters who helped him throughout his election were appointed to the government posts in place of the existing officials.
According to the textbooks, the reason of the removal and resettlement of the Cherokee Indians during the Jacksonian era is Jackson believed that Native American tribes might ally with foreign invaders. He further believed that any removal was the only way for Indians to preserve their tradition and maintain a separate identity. Georgia passed a law in 1830 stating that any white person living amongst Indians without a license from the government would be sent to prison. State legislators feared white missionaries were encouraging Indians to resist removal. In 1837, federal troops were called in to escort 16,000 Cherokees to their new home in Indian Territory. 1/4 of them died from exposure to starvation and fever during the march along the 18-mile journey known as the Trail of Tears.
The reasons for the increase in factories and urbanization is in our grade 8 textbook, which states there was economic growth, and due to this, job opportunities opened up and led to people to the cities.
The women's rights movement. In the 1800s, men held power over the society, and women stayed at home making food for their husbands, until women reformers changed that in 1848. Then women didn't have the same rights as men, but gained rights in their society after the movement. The Webster and Hayne debate and Calhoun's ideas surfaced again in 1830. Senator Webster denounced this theory, telling the Senate that the Union was not a compact of states. Of nullification, voiding the tariff, banning the collection of its duties in South Carolina, and threatening to secede from the Union. The Force Bill, giving the President the power to use military forces against South Carolina. The South Carolina threatened secession. A new tariff, lowered duties by 10%. Henry Clay finally proposed a compromise through a reduction in tariffs over the next 10 years. The education movement. Before the movement, unwealthy children were allowed less formal schooling, and wealthy children were taught everything by private tutors. Horace Mann of Massachusetts fought for unwealthy children to get the same education as wealthier children. The temperance movement was a ban of alcoholic beverages, because alcoholic beverages brought you unemployment and it ruined people's lives. When they put the ban, people kept employment and were healthier and happier. The improvement for mental illnesses was in the 1800s. Most people lacked the knowledge needed to care for these mental illnesses. Many mentally ill patients were locked in unheated rooms, chained to their beds, and were beat by their doctors until they found a treatment for this illness. The prison reform movement was another type of movement. Before it was reformed, the prisoners were dirty, ugly, unhealthy, beaten up by their guards, and had poor quality food. Then the movement came into action. They were allowed to learn how to read and write, and were to be treated fairly by the guards. And some prisons actually gained a library inside.
According to the textbook, the development in literature was Washington Irving, the author of stories about old New York, such as Rip Van Winkle, and The Headless Horseman was the first American writer to achieve fame in Europe. Irving was followed by James Fenimore Cooper, author of the adventure story The Last of the Mohicans. The development in art was Hudson River School, a school founded in 1825 by Thomas Cole, an English immigrant. Inspired by the nature beauty of the New York's Hudson River Valley and the Adirondack and Catskill Mountains, the author of the Hudson River School achieved fame by painting romantic landscapes. According to History.com, the development in music was the Star-Spangled Banner is the national anthem of the United States. The anthem's history began in the morning of September 14, 1814, when an attorney and amateur poet named Francis Scott Key watched U.S. soldiers who were under bombardment from British naval forces during the War of 1812 raise a large flag over Fort McHenry in Baltimore, Maryland.
Transportation. The main source of transportation at this time was the steamboat, a vessel that ran primarily on steam power. This led to the development of railroads, a system fit for none other than the steam engine. These two made the movement of goods easier and faster. With transportation comes communication. The most valuable communication tool was the telegraph. Thanks to this machine, daily newspapers can now publish next-day accounts of things such as speeches, elections, and battles.
A free enterprise system of economics developed in the new nation is stated in our grade 8 textbook, which states, the three basic economic questions are answered by the free interplay between producers and consumers. The three questions are where should it be produced, how should it be produced, and who gets what is produced. In the free enterprise system, individuals enjoy the freedom of making their own economic decisions. People have the right to own property and to use their property as they see fit. Some individuals invest their money in businesses to produce and sell goods and services. They hope to make a profit. The constitutional issues arising over the states' rights is in our grade 8 textbook, which states, John C. Callan had stated in 1828 that a state had the right to nullify a federal law within its borders or even to secede from the Union if it wished. South Carolina threatened to secede in 1832 but was stopped by President Andrew Jackson's threat of force. The principle of states' rights and state sovereignty would eventually lead several southern states to secede from the Union in 1860 to 1861.